This classic myth, recorded over 4,000 years ago, relates the death and resurrection of the Sumerian goddess of love, Inanna. The tale begins with these famous words: "From the great above to the great below, Inanna abandoned heaven and earth to descend to the underworld." On a day that happened long ago, Inanna learned that her childhood friend, Gugalana, who was also the husband of her sister, Ereshkigal, had died. Inanna greatly loved Gugalana, yet simply as a friend and not as a lover. So Inanna decided to go to the underworld, to her sister's domain, to perform the funeral rites. She gathered the symbols of her divine powers and, dressed in her royal robes, set out for the underworld.
Her faithful servants, Nishabur, accompanied her. Inanna spoke to Nishabur, saying, "My counselor, who always gives me wise advice, I am descending to the underworld. If I do not return in 3 days, dress yourself in a single garment like a beggar, and beseech the gods to not let me die down there."
When Inanna arrived at the outer gates of the underworld, she said,
"Go now, Ninshibor, and do not forget my words."
Then Inanna cried out in a strong voice.
"Open the doors."
The chief gatekeeper of the underworld asked,
"Who are you?"
She answered,
"I am Inanna, Queen of Heaven."
The gatekeeper asked her,
"If you truly are Inanna, Queen of Heaven, why do you take the road from which no travelers return?"
Inanna answered,
"Because of my older sister, Ereshkigal. Her husband has died, and I have come to perform the funeral rites."
The gatekeeper spoke,
"Stay here, Inanna. I will speak with my queen."
The chief gatekeeper of the underworld entered the palace of Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, and said,
"My queen, the Queen of Heaven waits outside the palace gates."
When Ereshkigal heard this, she slapped her thigh and bit her lip. Then she spoke,
"Heed my words, my chief gatekeeper. Open the gates and let Inanna come in. Yet as she enters, remove her royal garments. Let us humble the holy priestess of heaven."
The gatekeeper opened the outer gate and said to the goddess,
"Come in, Inanna. Enter."
Yet as she passed through the gates, he took all of her symbols of power. Inanna asked.
"What is happening?"
The gatekeeper answered,
"Be quiet, Inanna. The ways of the underworld are perfect. They may not be questioned."
Inanna walked into the palace of the underworld, naked and humbled. As Inanna came forward, Ereshkigal screamed at her, for Gugalana had confessed a secret love for Inanna, and Ereshkigal had killed him and placed the blame for his infidelity and for his death upon the holy priestess of heaven. The judges of the underworld suddenly surrounded Inanna, and Ereshkigal struck Inanna, turned her into a corpse, and hung her body from a hook on the wall.
Ninshubur, her faithful servant, waited 3 days for Inanna to return, and when she did not, Ninshubur began to mourn for her. Dressed as a beggar, Ninshubur journeyed to the holy cities and implored the help of the gods to rescue Inanna, pleading, "Do not let the Queen of Heaven perish in the underworld."
But the gods of Sumer were jealous of Inanna's power, saying, "She who enters the underworld will not return." And so they refused to help her. Then Nishubur entered the temple of the merciful Enki, and grieving upon hearing that Inanna had not returned, Enki took the dirt beneath his fingernails and created 2 beings, the Kurgara and the Galatur, that were neither male nor female.
Enki gave the Kugara the food of life, and to the Galatur he gave the water of life. And then he said to them, "Go down to the underworld, like little insects, for Ereshkigal, the queen of the underworld, is moaning right now, as if a woman about to give birth. And whatever she cries for, you cry for with her. And then Enki told the emissaries how to bring Inanna back.
The Kurgara and the Galater set out for the underworld. Like tiny little flies, they slipped through the cracks of the gates. And when they found the throne room, Ereshkigal's heart was reeling from the misery she had caused. She moaned, "Oh, my insides!" And they moaned, "Oh, your insides!" And she groaned, "Oh, my belly!" And they groaned, "Oh, your belly!" And she sighed, "Oh, my heart!" And they sighed, "Oh, your heart!" Ereshkigal suddenly stopped. She looked at the Kurgara and the Galater and asked, "Who are you, moaning and groaning and sighing with me?" "For your sympathy, I will give you a gift." Yet every time she offered a generous gift, the Kurgara and the Galater answered, "We do not wish that." Finally, Ereshkigal said, "Well, speak then. What do you wish for?" And the tiny beings answered, "We only want the corpse that hangs from that hook in the wall." So Ereshkigal gave them the body of Inanna.
The Kurgara sprinkled the food of life on the corpse. The Galater sprinkled the water of life on the corpse. And Inanna rose and started to ascend from the underworld. But the judges of the underworld grabbed her and said, "No one leaves the underworld unmarked. If you wish to return from the underworld, you must provide someone in your place." So the judges summoned demons to cling closely to Inanna until a replacement could be found.
When Inanna walked out of the underworld, she found Ninshubur waiting for her, dressed as a beggar. Yet when Ninshubur saw the demons holding Inanna, she threw herself in the dust at Inanna's feet. The demons said, "Go on, Inanna, we will take Ninshubur in your place." Inanna cried, "No, Ninshubur is the one who rescued me. I will never give Ninshubur to you." So together the travelers continued on until they reached the palace of Inanna. There she found her husband, Dumuzi, dressed in his best garments, sitting on her magnificent throne, drinking, feasting, and making music. Enraged that Dumuzi was enjoying himself in the great above while she was suffering in the great below, Inanna cried out in her rage that the demons should take Dumuzi to the underworld. And Inanna, casting the eye of death upon Dumuzi, shouted, "Take my husband away!" The demons seized Dumuzi, and as they started to beat him, Dumuzi let out a wail. He beseeched the gods, "Help me escape from these demons!" And the gods, hearing Dumuzi's cry, changed him into a snake, and Dumuzi slipped away from his captors.
When Dumuzi's sister, Geshtinana, came searching for her brother, Inanna had begun to repent for her decision to send him to the underworld in her place. Geshtinana said, "If I find my brother, I will share his fate." So, Inanna searched for Dumuzi, and when she found him, reassured both of them that neither would be abandoned to the underworld for all time. Instead, Geshtinana would remain there for half the year, and Dumuzi would replace her for the other half.
So while Dumuzi is in the underworld, Sumer will mourn for him, becoming dark and cold. But when he is free, Sumer will celebrate with sunshine and warmth. And thus, to the ancient Sumerians, the descent of Inanna into the underworld established the seasons. And until the end of their civilization, the Sumerians continued to exalt Inanna as a rising star in the heavens, a wandering celestial body that today we call Venus, setting in the west and rising in the east. And as you observe this bright planet gleaming in the twilight sky, may you recall this ancient myth, Inanna's descent into the underworld, from the great above to the great below.